Your friend and mine, Dave Coleman, has been very quiet as of late. And if I were to hazard a guess, it's because he's been working on things that are entirely too practical. Namely the Mazda 6. Full disclosure, this should have been a Mazda 6 sitting here right now, but it got rescheduled yet again. I promise we'll get to it whenever we get our hands on it. But in this case, he sent us an apology note, one in the form of 26 extra horsepower and 3 extra pounds of torque. Granted, the last number not as exciting, but it amounts to 181 horsepower, comes in at 7,000 RPM, and 151 pounds of torque comes in at 4,000 RPM. Out of the same engine and the same wonderful carrying case that we love so much. So rather than throwing lemons at Dave, although I'd love to do that, let's take the lemonade he sent and go and have some fun. You and I never have opportunities like this when we're together. More power in a car we know we already love, so it's never a bad thing. A beautiful sunshiny day here in the fall, and that technically this is the first day of fall. And number 3, and this is probably the most really opportune thing, a completely brand new road. So with that, let's put all of that to the test simultaneously. Shall we? Well, okay, the more power works, and we like it a lot. It makes a beautifully balanced car, somewhat unbalanced in just the right ways. Do we even really need to talk more about that? I think I have demonstrated to you why I love this thing. This is 2,300 pounds with only 181 horsepower, and we just went sideways twice. I was one of the very few people that said the last car was not underpowered, it was just perfectly powered. This, in using it in scenarios like this, you will not notice a huge difference. Like, here's a really good example. We've got a nice elevation change, 2 at the same time, right on top of each other. Down, and then up. Let's keep it in 3rd gear and understand how that extra power works. I would argue it's a little bit more instantaneous. Does it make a significant difference in terms of, does it change the character of the vehicle? Like you go from, I'll make it up, an E400 coupe to an E63 wagon. It doesn't make that kind of a character shift. So how exactly did Coleman coax extra horsepower out of effectively the same engine? Well, he did a couple of things. Number 1, he lowered the weight of the pistons and the connecting rods. Number 2, he increased the diameter of the valves and the exhaust ports. And then he also changed the angle of the valves as well as the lift height. And then on top of all that, he changed the shape of the ports. So in other words, it's more flash and it just breathes better. I don't think you and I need to spend any time on driving dynamics virtually unchanged, even with the extra power. It's still a beautifully balanced vehicle. But I do feel we need to usurp this discussion and focus on some UX stuff here, man. I love this car, and I've told you multiple times, this is one of the few I'd actually write a check for in this RF setup, even in this color. But that infotainment system is abysmal, man. Forget about the fact that it has, or does not have, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Me, I'd want Apple CarPlay. It is near impossible to get the presets set up. Kind of a little bit behind the scenes here. I always set the presets as soon as I get the car, so I can go from Howard, I can go to my BBC News, I can go down to my country music or my chill, depending on my mood. Here, I don't even bother with Mazdas. It's that infuriating trying to set the presets. Even when I'm sitting in the hangar and the car's not moving, it's infuriating. And please, Dave Coleman, fix this. This is one of the weak points of this car. I would argue the graphics on the nav screen are subpar as well. To the point where I don't think I would really need that as an option. I would prefer Apple CarPlay, better UX overall, than having that set up the way it is. Right about now, you're thinking it's the engine, stupid. End of story already. And for the most part, you'd be correct. However, there are some tweaks we do need to focus on. Remember the first ND that you and I drove back in the summer of 2015 already? That had something called a Brembo BBS package. Take a wild guess why they call that. Well, it's still on offer, but now it includes Recaro seats. I was really hoping this one had that, but I guess the good news is we have to get that one so we get another bite at the apple. Anyway, clearly this one is not fitted with the Brembo BBS package. However, it's got something called the GTS package that has Bilstein's limited slip differential and a strut tower system over the engine. Then there are like a host of color and trim changes and like those safety nanny things that you and I don't get excited about. Although I will say the brown top, I'm kind of looking forward to that. And then Kumo's pretty excited about the fact that now there's a tilt and telescoping steering wheel. Okay, I really don't want to do this, but if we're talking more power in a car that's somewhat practical, even one that looks like this, with a roof that comes off like this, we need to use it in traffic. So let's put our foot into it and try to understand on a 4-lane divided highway here. Did it have a problem merging into traffic before? No. Does it have a problem merging into traffic now? No. Let's try, you know what, let's catch up to these guys here and let's try a simulated pass, shall we? I'm going to give you a top tip if you're coming to visit the California Republic. We are on the Pacific Coast Highway going south towards LA. Please do not speed. I'm not saying this because I am a resident of the California Republic. I'm saying this because it's not an if, it's a when you will get a ticket, and the ticket is not $70 like they will tell you. The ticket is $450 with California fees. So we're going to slow down. Rental Camaro is going now officially below the speed limit. Actually way below the speed limit, kind of unsafe. So now let's try a simulated pass around the rental Camaro. And you know what? Let's stay in third gear. Let's not downshift. Let's really make it hard for the car. The reality is, the extra 26 horsepower, where it makes a difference is more in situations like this. Not so much the fun stuff we were doing before. Yeah, you can fishtail the car. We've proven that. But it's really more around town. I found this thing just a better tool using it in cities. And that's kind of the secret no one really tells you about Miatas. This, like back in the day when I was living in London, I had an Elise. Back in the days when I was living in New York City, I had a Z3M Roadster. No one will tell you those are good city cars, but they're actually wonderful because they have short wheelbases and a good amount of power to get in and out of traffic. This is exactly the same thing, and I would argue this is even better than the BMW because the weight is lower at 2,300 and change. So with that, I don't think I'm going to go find more traffic. I think I'm going to do a U-turn and go back to Kumo's favorite road. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, this thing is so much better. Whatever one of these little Japanese roadster thingies you got, a Miata, an MX-5, an ND, you gotta get rid of it. You gotta take your lumps and you gotta lose your money and buy one of these things, and you gotta do it today. Said no one. I have been telling you for years that the entire reason for being for the MX-5 is balance. And the ND, it just took it to a level of artistry, and now by adding 26 extra horsepower, it makes the artistry put a little bit bigger smile on your face, but it still keeps that all-important balance. You see, once you buy an Elise, you understand the concept of what the engineers were going for here. You can't put too big wheels on it. You can't put too much horsepower, because then you lose that perfect symbiotic relationship between the driver, the road, and the environment. I'm not trying to be a tree hugger here, but there are some other changes that they've ushered in here that I would argue are more for emissions, more for safety equipment, more for making it fancier with color and trim. So it's not really about the 26 horsepower, it's more about sharpening or refining the entire package to make it available to more people. With that, I am going to pose the question of flying Miata to you. You know, I'm a huge fan of Brandon and the guys there, and I love some of the stuff that they do because it is completely crazy. So I'm going to leave you with this. If you were to engage the services of Brandon and the guys at Flying Miata, what would you do, why would you do it, and what budget would you allocate to said project? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, Kumo and I do need to go for a long drive. One of the things we love doing with these cars, and this is kind of behind the scenes, definitely inside baseball, we usually, when we get very exciting cars, and this definitely falls in that list, we like to take it up to Santa Barbara and go to the original Freebirds and get a burrito. Until I see you next time, bis später.